to give you some basic information about how things are done in the industry. This is just basic information that one needs to understand when one is making clothing. I think many of you, or some of you, have used these little weave-it boards when you were a child. You've got the yarns this way, and you go up and down this way, and up and down this way, and you reverse the up and down on the next row, and back and forth, and you wind up with a little square that, if you're really ambitious and make enough of these, you can then make a blanket for your cat. That's essentially how weaving is done, although there's many variations on the weaving process. For instance, it could go under 3 in one row and over 3 on the next row, or under 3 and then under and then over 1 and then next over 1 and under 3 and then over 1, so that it goes on and on like that. Quite frankly, I was always one that, just give me the fabric when you're done, please, and I'll see what I can do with it. And that's sort of where I am. So I'm no expert on weaving, but I do understand the basic concepts. Now, I was fortunate enough to take a field trip into a fabric manufacturing company that was manufacturing fabric. They had manufactured it for the White House back when Jacqueline Kennedy was redecorating the White House. And I was able to see their procedures, and I have a couple pictures here that I took at the time. You want to always think that a loom goes out this way, but actually in the industry it goes out this way a little bit and then goes up. They have very high ceilings. And here is a picture of a man observing as the fabric is woven. This is high-end fabric that's being woven for domestic use. And he is watching, and you can see the yarns have been blown through the loom by air. It's amazing what they can do today. It's modern technology, which is why when you go into the fabric store, fabrics are, quite frankly, in my opinion, at a ridiculously low price, considering that there was a time when it all had to be hand woven and fabric was very expensive. Back in George Washington's day, I've understood clothing was as expensive as what a car would be now. I mean, and I understand that George Washington was one person who had an entire suit all made from the same fabric, which was very unusual. So it seemed to be sort of mix and match. All right, this is another picture from the same company, and you can see the weaving as it's being done. Okay, so that gives you an idea. Now, what happens with this is the yarns that come down this way. By the way, a thread is a yarn, but a yarn is not necessarily a thread. A thread is a yarn that has been doctored so that it can take the beating as it goes through a sewing machine. Most yarns you can't thread through a sewing machine, they'll break. The yarns that go this up and down this way, they have to take a considerable amount of beating because the yarns are constantly going back and forth this way. But the yarns that go this way only have to go through once. They go through once, that's it. But this way is constant beating. So these yarns have to be stronger. And this direction of the grain is called the straight grain, and it parallels the selvage when you buy fabric. This is the selvage, and this is a straight grain. The yarns that run this way are the yarns that had to withstand this beating back and forth. This is why when you cut your garments, you want to cut them, almost all of them, on the straight grain. Because as they hang in the closet, if they're not cut on the straight grain, your clothes will actually age in the closet, which is one of the reasons why, if your clothes aren't hung up on good hangers, when you go back, when the next season comes along, your clothes will look like they're kind of worn out. And that's because they haven't been hung correctly, and gravity has been pulling down and working on them, and they have actually been aging in your closet. So it's very, very important. Don't use the hangers that come from the dry cleaners. Return them. The dry cleaners will be only too glad to get them back. They're only supposed to be used temporarily. Just about any other kind of hanger will work fine. All right, so now this is the straight of the grain, and you can tell which is the straight even if you don't have a selvage on the edge of the fabric, because the straight grain has the least stretch. And see, I'm pulling on it and it has very little stretch. Now when I pull the same amount this way, you can see how easy it gives. This is why you want the cross grain to be parallel to the floor, and you want the straight grain to be on the plumb to the floor. That's very, very important. Now there are garments that are cut on the bias, and the bias would be, the true bias is at a 45-degree angle to the straight or cross grain, and it really stretches it out like that. All right, this can give you a very beautiful garment cut on the bias, but when you put it in your closet, it needs to be folded. And this is also true of knits. Knits have a different construction than wovens. So a knit, if you want to preserve it and have it last well, you need to fold it into your drawer and not hang it up. One of the great books that I have found really helped my students was Grading the Fit. If you're having trouble fitting your patterns, this is the answer. Now, I'm not going to tell you this book is easy because it isn't, but I will tell you it works. Understanding how to grade a pattern is invaluable information. This book starts out with helping you determine which is your best pattern size. Here you can see American Home Sewing Pattern Sizing, chest and true bust measurements, so that you can determine which pattern size really does fit you. As you work through this book, you correct a sloper. Now, sloper is just a basic pattern, front and back bodice, front and back skirt and sleeve that fits you closely. You could draft a bra from the front and back bodice sloper. You develop a sloper and you get that to fit you, and once that fits you, then you compare that sloper with the original sloper from which you developed it, and that gives you your grading coordinates. And now that you have your grading coordinates, you can then grade home sewing patterns to your custom fit, and I will tell you right now it works. This is a book you need. And now I'm going to talk to you about grading. In an expensive store, you may wear a size 4, whereas in an inexpensive store, you may wear a size 10. That's quite a difference. But actually, the fit's the same. It's that the grade rule is different. And it may even be the same grade rule. They may call a size 4 a size 10 in one company and a size 4 in another company. They may be using the same grade rule, or they may not be using the same grade rule. All right, so where do grade rules come from? And they come from their fit models. Most of the time, a fit model is hired because she has the same measurements as their sample size grade rule. But sometimes the grade rule is developed from the model, and the model may be the wife of the owner of the manufacturing company. This is why, from one store to another, you'll find that different sizes will fit you, and they'll fit you differently because of the different grade rules. The standard sizing grade rule has been developed by the U.S. government and is used for mail order clothing and for many of the pattern companies and for some manufacturers. I'm going to show you how grading was done when I worked in the industry. Now, everything I show you is now computerized, but back in the day, the computers didn't do this. And when I teach this to my students, I teach them how it was done back in the day, because if you understand hands-on, you then understand the computer. But if you learn on the computer, you may not understand hands-on. So I'm showing you hands-on now so you understand what the computer does. And the computer grades. All right, so I have a page from one of my books that shows the grading as done when I worked at one of the companies where I worked. They had at the time 12 different stores, and I was their fit model, and everything in size 10 at the time fit me perfectly in all 12 stores because I was a fit model and everything was drafted to fit me, which was kind of nice. And I was also learning grading. I was essentially hired to learn to do the grading, to be a grader trainee, and I was also drafting patterns for the company, and it was really quite an experience. I really enjoyed that job. Unfortunately, they closed because industry was going offshore and they couldn't compete with the cost of garments coming in from offshore. All right, so here is a whole set of graded patterns done the way they used to be done in the industry, and they're done on oak tag. And that's how great patterns were done back then. This is a cutter's must, and this is put together after the patterns are graded, and it goes out to the cutters to tell them what they're to cut. Everything is figured out in the designing department. The designing department is a lab where problems hopefully are solved before it goes out to the factory. The designing department, like I said, it's a lab. That's where we hope we get the problems out of the patterns so that when we go out to the factory, we don't have hitches or problems. Of course, there's always problems with manufacturing, but we try to eliminate as many as possible. In this case, this is a blouse, set of blouse patterns, and they're well used, and they're also pretty old. That's why they are so discolored, but they would still work. And what happened with my students is they traced around the patterns on tracing paper, so they had their own copy of the pattern, and then they made themselves a blouse. Each student made herself a blouse, and she chose the size according to her chest size that would fit her. Most of them did not need any changes in the bust area, but a few did, and when they did, I did it because they were learning sewing. They weren't learning grading in my class. All right. These are the pockets that were used, all right, and these are the different pieces that they used. What I'm doing is they're all set up according to size, as you can see. I'm going to have all this put back together again after we finish this video, but I don't mind because I want you to see how this is done. All right, so this is a size 4. You can grade any size from any size. So in other words, if I put the size 4 in here, I can grade a size 2, size 6, size 8, 10, 12, so forth. This is the little grader that I used when I worked in the industry. This is all done by hand back then. And I've got a piece of paper underneath. This is tracing paper, but imagine that it's oak tag and that I'm grading. And if you notice, you'll see there's 2 plies of oak tag here. That's how we did it. Sometimes we cut through 4 plies. I'm going to put this in, and so I try to make it as straight as possible. You can see the little holes, and this is where it's been graded in the past. Get in here really good and tight and get it as much as possible in the straight grain and bring down this. All right, and there we go. Now, I've got to look at my grade rule because, quite frankly, I forget all the moves. Fortunately, I took notes when I worked in the industry. I would come home and take notes because I wasn't allowed to write anything down on the job. And I would write notes at home and keep track of all this, which is why I now have this to refer to, because how much of this are you going to remember? I mean, it's just an awful lot of stuff. This is a size 4. I'm going to pretend it's a size 10. I want to bring it up to size 12, so I'm going to do the measurements. We're going to say this is a size 10. It says size 4, but just remember it's size 10. All right, this is size 10. I'm going to make a size 12. Remember when you were in grammar school, maybe some of you remember, some of you may forget. When you learned plotting, you had an X and Y was, you had was like this and like this, cross lines. So this was X, and this was X, and this was Y, and this was Y, and this was X, my X, Y, and this Y, X, and this was X, Y, and this, oh, wait a minute, I don't think I have this right. All right, they have to be different. All right, well, I'm going to set up my own way. So this is the X line. Oh, I remember. This is X, Y, and this is plus. This is Y, X, and this is plus. And this is X, Y, and this is minus, and this is Y, X, and this is minus. So we've got 4 different things here. And this is how you plot when you're plotting on a flat plane. All right? If you add a Z to it, you're now got 3-dimensional. This is 2-dimensional. In this case with grading, you're only plotting on a flat plane, so you don't need the Z. All right? I hope that makes sense to somebody. Just let's say that this is modern technology, but it's not that hard to do. All right? So we're going to say this is a size 10, and I'm going to grade it up to a size 12. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that everything's on 0 and 0 here on these roars that are on this. And this is, by the way, very, very accurate. All right? And so I want to make it a size 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down 1/8, and I'm going to go out 3/8. Okay. I need to put my glasses on so I can see these tiny little numbers here. Okay, there it is. It's on 3/8 exactly. And I'm going to mark this right here. I mean, I could still use these patterns today if I wanted to. Alright, I now wanted to go down 1/4, a total 1/4. So it went down an eighth, it's going down another eighth, which is 1/4. And I'm going to bring it down here. This would be the dart area. It goes down there. That's where you put in the darts, but this doesn't have darts. And then it's going to come down a total of 3/8, bring down another 1/8. So it's a total of 3/8. So from a size 10 to a size 12, it has lengthened 3/8 of an inch. Okay. Now I'm going to go and I'm grade up here. So I'm going to bring it up to the original 1/8, which is where I marked that. And then I'm going to bring it up 1/8 minus a 1/16 of an inch. This much. And it's out 3/16 instead of 3/8. Bring it out 3/6, bring it back in 3/8. Get in like that. And I get this here. I get the notch. Now the notches don't grade properly, even with this little machine. We always had to walk the sleeve caps around the armholes after we got done with using the machine. Alright. And now I'm going to bring it all the way up to 0. And I'm going to get this here. And I'm going to take in this little notch here. And now I'm going to bring it in. This goes out 1/16 from the edge. Okay, this comes here. And this goes up 1/16 above. So I'm going to erase some of this out of here. This has to come out. Alright, so now I'm continuing to grade this. I'm grading the shoulder at the neck. And this is up 1/16 of an inch and out 1/16 of an inch. Out goes that way, up goes this way. And I'm putting the notch in here. Get around. And then this is going to, the neck is going to go down 1/32 of an inch from 0. And that's right between the 0 and the 1/16 mark. It goes down that amount. And it comes in to 0, and we continue with the neck. Okay. And now this is just a straight line, the whole distance. It has to go down a total of 5/8 of an inch, and since this is a straight line, you can take it all the way down 5/8 of an inch. Alright, and this spot here should be parallel with the bust dart, which we don't have here, but nevertheless it's down 1/4 of an inch. So this should come to here. So you've got to have all these notches line up together. And I see that this is not straight across here, so there's a problem there. So I'm going to go back out and check on this. This is what we had to do when we worked in the industry, of course. It goes out a total of 3/8, and it's down a total of 5/8. Let me take it all the way down, and maybe I didn't have it all the way down here. And now it lines up. See, this is wrong. I can just scribble a little mark out. Alright, now as far as the pocket is concerned, that was always something that was a little bit on the creative side. Alright, so I'm going to take it back to 0. I'm going to take it back up to 1/8 of an inch down. So now we don't want the pocket too close to the front. So we'll move it out just about half of it. So it was 3/8, we'll put it out 3/16, and we'll center the pocket that way. Now that was something that we always just had to say, okay, well, what are we going to do here? And we just make up our mind, do what we wanted. And then we would carry through with that same procedure all the way through the different sizes. Now, that's one size. All right, now when you make it a size larger, okay, we've said it's a 10, so it went to a 12. You go to a 14, everything doubles. All right, so now instead of going out 3/8 of an inch, we go out 3/4. So the easy way is to go out 3/8 and then to count out 3 more eighths. 1, 2, 3, which brings us to 3/4, of course. And now you put this in and bring this in like that, and then we're going to bring it up. So this is going to come all the way up to 0, of course. And this goes out a total of, let's see, 3/16 of an inch. So it's half that 3/4, so it would be 3/8 instead of 3/16. I'm going to lift it up so you can see what's happening. And this is what you see when you see these graded patterns. You'll see these lines like this, and this is how the grading is done. So you'll have it, okay, so we go out, I'm going to go out into the bottom too. Okay, so this was 3/4, we went out to that. Let's see if I got it right. We went out, let's see, it went out 3/3, and it went down 5/8, so it would be 5/8 would be 5/4. So 5/4 is 1 1/4. Bring it all the way down to there. And we're going to bring it in to 0. We'll get it down here. And you can see the grading. That's how it works. And you do this all the way through the whole thing. Now, as far as the buttonholes are concerned, where they go, they would be graded individually. First of all, we'd start out with having them, I'm going to bring it back up to where this is. So this is level with the underarm, and we probably have the buttonhole start there, but then we would grade them individually so that we would come out exactly the right amount on the garment. This is where they've been graded. Okay, so this would be, the one would lie over top of this, and you can see it lies right on top, and these would be used, you can see it's a little bit shorter because this would be used on a sewn garment. This is the finished edge, so it would be come in a little bit. So here is where it would fit there, and you can see the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. All right, and all this was graded with varying seam allowances. If the seam allowances are on the pattern from which you are grading, the seam allowances will be on the patterns that you are grading. They just automatically are there. If you're grading with no seam allowances, there'll be no seam allowances on the graded patterns either, but nobody did that. And all this is now done on a computer. You just hit a button and it's done, bingo. Whereas it would take a whole day to grade one set of these patterns. That's how it was back when. But we understood how it was done. And because I actually hand graded patterns, I understood how to use grading to help my students understand how to get their garments to fit them. If you know how you differ from your standard size that you're using, you can grade those differences into your pattern before you ever cut it, and your pattern will fit you. However, many times the patterns aren't drafted accurately to the grade rule. And one of the biggest mistakes that's made with these home sewing patterns is that the true bust point isn't at the grade rule spot. It's moved somewhere else. And if that's the case, and you are assuming that it is in the correct spot, then when you make your garment, it's not going to fit you across the bust. And that is a very important factor, because how a garment fits a woman's bust is extremely important for the garment to look right. This blouse was made from this pattern, goes all the way back to years. And this fabric I bought, I saw it years ago. It was in a bin out on 4th Street, and obviously the fabric store wanted to get rid of it because it was $1 a yard, and I bought it and had my stash forever. But I am in the current process of making a business ensemble, and this is part of the ensemble. I'm going to show you some of the other things. Now this, of course, was this pattern which I adapted. I lowered the neckline, and other than that, I didn't have too many changes to make. Of course, I corrected for the bust, and you may notice there's no darts in this at all right? But there is increase over the bust because it's eased in here. There's some bust starting here, there's some bust starting here, and there's some bust starting here. It's been eased in all over the garment, so there's no darts to sew. And you can learn how to do that looking at my videos. Let's talk a little bit about grading. A grade rule is a series of measurements used to proportionately enlarge or reduce pattern sizes. Slopers are basic patterns that fit close to the body. They are used to develop patterns for various styles of clothing. Shown here are graded slopers: the front and back bodice, the front and back skirt, and the sleeve slopers in sizes 2 through 30. These graded slopers show how a series of graded sizes stack. Design departments traditionally work with a mid-size range, which is designated as a sample size. A Mrs. sample size is often size 10. New styles are developed in the sample size. Most new styles are developed from styles that sold well the previous season, not from the company's slopers. After sample garments are sewn from the new style's patterns, approved for production and sold to the buyers, the style is then graded into the sizes that are sold to the buyers. Now I'm going to show you some other things I made too that are part of this ensemble. This is a jacket, and this is a copy from a motorcycle jacket that I saw in the store where I go shopping. I have one store that I prefer, and you can take garments out on your charge, and if you return them with the label still on them, it doesn't matter when, they will take them back for whatever price you paid. So the motorcycle jacket that I was copying was black, and I always wanted a motorcycle jacket, but instead I made it in this fabric that I bought down on 4th Street, and you can see it's got all these zippers in it, and they were a trip to put in, believe me, but there they are, they're in, and you can see that it's lined. Now I took the pattern off the shell of the jacket that I took out on my charge, and of course I returned that. Here's more zippers in here, of course, and you can see the whole garment is lined. And now here's a shell that goes in that matches the lining, of course. I've got some streaks on here, but I have found I can take them out with soap, so they'll come out. I'll have to take them out. Here's the skirt. It's also lined with the silver, and I'm doing this to match my hair because my hair is now turning gray. And if you look at YouTube, you will see information on color analysis, and it's very important to get your colors right. This skirt is made from my skirt sloper. A sloper is a pattern from which you draft patterns, and you can see that there is a woven pattern in this fabric. So I didn't want to cut it apart and then have it to match, so there is no side seam here. There's just a dart, so it would fit in. The only seam in this skirt is here, and of course it has a zipper. Now I was very concerned that this would be a bit risque, but it turns out it's not. If I unzip it to make it easier to walk, it really doesn't look out of place at all. So I was very happy to find that out. And of course I have a pocket here. I love pockets. I have another pocket here, and of course it's also lined, as you can see. And pockets are great because if you are going out with other people on business, you don't want to carry the handbag if possible. You want to avoid that. So if you have pockets, you can put things in them, and that takes care of that problem. All right, so that's the skirt, that's the jacket. I'm wearing the blouse. All right, and so I will want some more clothes to go with it, and the goal is to make a pair of slacks. The rest of the ensemble, I want to make a vest to go with the jacket and the skirt. There's enough fabric here, and also a pair of slacks. So that's still to be cut, and I'm going to be showing my sewing steps as I do it, cutting and sewing steps on Instagram. And we still have fabric left over from the blouse. Remember, this was only $1 a yard. It's polyester, which by the way is not sustainable, but if you already have the fabric, there's no point in throwing it away. It's going to take 500 years to disintegrate in landfill, whether you make something out of it or whether you don't. So you might as well make something out of it and have it be of use. And when I make this, I'm going to take this design from which I made this top, and I'm going to make a skirt like this, but of course I'm going to revert to my skirt sloper, and take that and draft the skirt pattern from that. I want to have this fabric in there, and so that it will be this little slit in here, and you'll see it fold back and forth, so it will match with this. And then probably maybe I'll put this silver part down here in the center here, and this will actually be this plait. Now this of course has to be lined because you can see straight through it. It's chiffon. I hold it up, I can see right through it, and it's very tricky to cut. But I have a grid here on my table, and I use tracing paper, which I strongly advocate. Here's some tracing paper right here. You can buy it at an art store, and this is the way to trace off your patterns, of course. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.